Welcome to Engaging Cities Fireside Chats. On each episode of the show, I talk to leaders who are paving the way in civic engagement in order to inspire listeners and share strategies that you can implement in your own community. This podcast is proudly supported by our sponsor, Conveo, the engagement platform for plans and policies. Check them out at konveo.com. I'm your host, Kelly Hickler, the Community Manager with Engaging Cities, as well as the founder of Cinovation Studio, which is dedicated to innovative civic education and engagement. Today, I'm talking with Amber Gregg, the very talented CEO of Community Catalyst and Vice President of Pier Pride, which is a nonprofit organization in San Clemente, California, that works in partnership with the city and community stakeholders to help preserve the San Clemente Pier. So when we say Pier Pride, we are talking about an ocean pier, as in P-I-E-R, just so you don't get confused. Amber highlights the importance of ongoing community feedback and outlines several strategies to ensure that projects align with public desires. She also recounts some pitfalls such as bureaucratic delays and less successful events like bingo nights, and recommends how to navigate these hurdles. Amber and I talk about how in college, a serendipitous visit to a dentist kickstarted her planning career. And we also go into detail about Chad and JT and their proposal for a Paul Walker statue to be built on the San Clemente Pier. I'm excited for this episode. I hope you are too. Let's get into it. Hi, Amber.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'll have you talk a little bit more about yourself in a minute, but I'm just thinking of this story right now of how we met, and I think that this needs to be shared.
It is even
Yeah. That Amber and I met during was that the 2022 or 2021? What year was
2022.
2022 APA California Orange, or is it California State?
It's a
APA
state. It just happened to be in
Conference.
Orange
It
County.
was in Orange County. It was in Anaheim. And I had been tasked with coming up with a photo backdrop. And I came up with this idea of putting together all these foam letters. And for coming up with how to stick them together, I thought, well, why don't we use toothpicks? So
We were clearly on a budget for this.
there was a budget limit, yes, to this backdrop. And so I came into the room with a bunch of foam letters and like 1,000 toothpicks. and Amber said, well, how can I help you? And I said, can you help me stick some toothpicks in these letters? And so we sat there for an hour?
Oh, it's more than that. I mean,
2
how many
hours?
times did we have to try and redo it again? And it fell apart. We became structural engineers and additional planners.
Yeah, we became structural engineers certified.
Like very much that school project where it's like, what's your strongest toothpick design you can make? And we nailed it.
Yeah, we nailed it. That thing held together surprisingly. Like even people, moving it around or whatnot, that thing held. So I am so proud of us and our work.
Yeah, I was too. Nobody knew it was toothpicks. Who would have known?
So Amber, thanks for being on the podcast today. And why don't you tell our listeners just a little bit about what Community Catalyst is and just a little bit of your background and how you got started in planning?
Yeah, well, as you said, my name's Amber Gregg, and I'm the CEO of Community Catalyst. And I've been a municipal planner for over 20 years now. And I was in municipal planning, which is city planning, for 18 years. And then I started my own firm about 7 years ago. And the reason why I did it was I really am passionate about planning. I think that really comes from where I grew up and how I grew up, I had a great childhood. I'll preface it with that. But it wasn't the
Good.
nicest of communities. And so
Okay.
on the way to college, I went to college in San Diego, which is just a beautiful city. And I remember thinking, like, why does my community not look like this? Like mine, I came from very much more of a um lackluster when it came to community design and landscaping. And at the time, I had no idea why my community felt like that. But
Okay.
my
You
last
share. Do you not want to call them out? Okay.
no, I can. So especially if if you're from Southern California. So I grew up in Fontana and loved it. And I actually had the privilege of going back and being a planner in my hometown, which I would highly, highly recommend to anyone. It's
Yeah.
really cool, actually. Um, but my last semester in college, I was majoring in public relations and, and community or in economic development. And my very last semester, I was a bit of a procrastinator. And you had a job shadow somebody for the entire semester, and then that was your presentation at the end of the year. And I had 2 weeks left and hadn't done anything. And so I was in my dentist's office, which happened to be at City Hall randomly enough. There was a guy at the counter and looking really bored. So I just walked up to him and I was like, "What do you do?" And he's like, "I'm a city planner or I'm a planner." And I said, "A planner, like a party planner? What are you planning?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm a city planner." And I had never even heard of what city planning was before. And so he spent hours with me. And honest to God, I cannot remember his name. And that man changed my life. But after going through what a general plan was and a zoning ordinance and chatting with him, um, it kind of dawned on me. And I said, "So you're telling me that you've turned volunteering into a profession?" And he was like, "Well, yeah, basically that's what it is." And that was it. I was sold and I have just been passionate about planning ever since. And with that experience, I realized that like planning really is the great equalizer when it comes to communities, right? So had we really had a landscape plan in place and those
Mm.
types of Montana, that community would look incredibly different. Um, since then, they have done those things and it looks much better. But it was interesting in the 1990s. It didn't look like that.
Yeah, right. And I love this story of how you got started in planning, and I feel like we need to find this man.
Yeah, right? So if you're the city of San Marcos in 2001, I really need to know your name because I feel terrible. I feel like I need to write that man a card and tell him thank you.
Yeah, like, is, it's Craigslist missed connections, is that still a thing?
Later Gen Zers, I think, or Gen Xers.
Okay, let's put that out into the universe. We're gonna find this person,
Yeah,
and we're gonna
yeah.
have him on the podcast.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Probably long retired by now, though.
Alright. So you do have a project that you're here to talk about today, which is called Pier Pride.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about, first of all, how to spell that, and
So pier is
what.
talking about a municipal pier, like an ocean pier. So that's so Pier Pride really came out to help support the municipal pier in San Clemente. And so I thought it would be a great one to chat about because it is a grassroots project, which I think is a little bit different than a lot of other projects. And so, yeah, I'm happy to chat about that one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, when I first heard it, I was like, "Peer," like, "Oh, having pride in your friends?
Yeah.
Making friends?" I love it.
Yeah. It does get a lot of confusing. What is that about? uh,
So, okay, Pure Pride, Pier in
that's
San
true.
Clemente, the San Clemente Pier. Um, so yeah, what is involved with that, and what is the community engagement effort look like for this?
So, Peer Pride is actually a nonprofit organization that was started by community leaders within the city itself. And which I think makes it unique in and of itself. But the reason why the need came about was because the municipal pier, as you can imagine, it's in the water and gets beat up by storms all the time. It's made out of wood, not great things. So they're super expensive to maintain and to upkeep. And when redevelopment went away, most of the piers funding went away. And so once the state of California got rid of that funding mechanism, the city was left with, oh my gosh, we have this really expensive pier. They're not a very big city in their bedroom community. So they didn't have a lot of extra funds to put towards it. And the pier doesn't generate money, right? It's a tourist attraction, but it doesn't make any money.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so the pier started to kind of get a little blighted. And so you had a couple of community leaders, past city council members, and committee members, and they were like, hey, we should really do something about this. And so they formed this organization. And what's been really amazing is it's completely volunteer based. They have about 12 board members, and they've been able to spearhead a capital improvement project for the pier every single year, which that is no small accomplishment for a large organization, let alone a
Yeah.
volunteer-based
Wow.
organization. So I'm always really impressed that, we're able to accomplish that every single year in and out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I had
Mhm.
no idea that this even existed. I just thought, okay, yeah, there's a San Clemente Pier. I guess the city takes care of it. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I think that you have a lot of things that you have in your communities where you just take for granted that you have this amazing resource that everybody knows about, but nobody really knows, like, what goes into the care and maintenance of keeping those community assets.
Yeah, exactly. So, has there been a lot of community engagement involved in this, or maybe just stakeholder engagement involved in in this effort or ongoing efforts
Yeah.
yearly of keeping the pier up or maintained?
I would say yes to all the above. But it's like, okay, where did it start? So when Pier Pride started, Um, I was not on the original part of the original founding of it. I was still working for the city of San Clemente at the time as the city planner. Um, but was really intrigued by this group of people who had came together and was like, wow, this is really amazing that they saw a need, just community members, and was like, you know what, we're going to do something about it. And so I think when you get people who really aren't focused or specializing in working professionally in foundation and organizations, you get more of an idea, right? And so they knew they had to do outreach and partnerships at the very beginning, but really didn't know what that was going to look like.
Mhm.
Um, so in the beginning, they were really great about having goals. They decided that they were going to have 1 month that was dedicated to awareness of the municipal pier within the community. And that was going to help with community outreach and support of that.
Mm.
And then also working on partnerships, right? But the Pier Pride doesn't own the pier. The city owns the pier.
Uh-huh.
And the city's not even the main stakeholder. The community members and the people who visit the pier are the main stakeholders. So you have this
Yeah.
really unique dynamic happening there over things. And then you have Peer Pride Foundation itself trying to herd cats, if you will, in order to make this enhancement possible. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's an interesting position to be in because they, as you said, they don't own it. So obviously they have to get the city on board with
Mhm.
whatever decisions are being made. And what kind of methods or what do they do to engage with, whether it's residents or tourists or different stakeholders, to find out what their preferences are?
Yeah. So I think, from that original shotgun approach, they kind of figured out a little bit more of what worked for them. Um, in the beginning, I think a lot of people suffer from this is that you try to do all these things and you overextend yourself. And then
Mhm.
a lot of things that you're working on, but not necessarily quality over quantity kind
Mhm.
of. So throughout the last Pure Pride's been around for about a decade now. Um, through that though, I would say we probably have about 8 forms of community engagement that we follow. But the top 3 that we really focus on are partnerships and collaborations, as and that's because we don't own it and we need funds from larger funding sources than what we can just fundraise for. And then surveys and polls are huge. So every year we do 2 surveys and polls. And that is one to find out what people want to have done on the pier because you don't want to be working on something and only have the community come back and say, well, whose bright idea was that? We never wanted that. Like, why are you wasting our time? Because that's just an uphill battle. Um, and then the second survey that we did do is, hey, how did this go? Like I
Oh,
said, we
okay.
complete one every single year. So it's,
Yeah.
what did you think about this effort? Is it successful? What did you like to see again, in the future? And I think having that continuous feedback, one, helps guide us, but two, really builds the trust in the community that, hey,
Mhm.
they're actually listening to us and recognizes that we don't have an agenda of any kind. It really is just to enhance and beautify the pier in a way that the community wants to see.
Okay. So you said you had 8 different methods.
Yeah. Some are bigger than
Yeah.
others, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I
Okay.
would say, um, well, the third biggest one, we'll go for the three biggest, right? You said
Okay.
surveys, the social media, and local print media. I know a lot of people say print is dead, but here, because it's a small town, there are two local print medias that everybody reads. Whether you're a resident or whether you're a visitor, you
Okay.
pick up these two publications. One's the San Clemente Times and the other's the San Clemente Journal. And so it's been really important to have those partnerships on board too, which has been great. But I would
Yeah.
say other things that we focus on are public meetings, town halls,
Oh,
right? Because
really?
we're
Okay.
working with the city and the residents, it's important to have those and to show that this is a partnership with the city. And it's great to have those together. So a lot of times we'll either go to planning or city council meetings and give updates there or present them with a check. And then likewise, if we have a workshop, city council members, mayor will come and be at those and open those for us, which is really great. Then advisory committees and boards, that's another big one. The people who are on the board, it's a working board, which is really important. Meaning you're just not there to provide your opinion on something or to guide something.
Mhm.
You're actually working and doing stuff. So for me personally, I am a board member. I'm the vice president of Pier Pride, in addition to working with them on their planning efforts and their community outreach, which has been exciting. But it just kind of shows you how you have to wear multiple hats.
Right. I think that's pretty typical how it goes in the nonprofit world or just with volunteer work in general is wearing a lot of hats.
Yes. Yeah, and having time to wear those hats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, what do you think have been the methods that have worked the best? You mentioned the print media.
So I think, the methods that have worked the best, absolutely partnerships and collaboration. I think in the beginning, you're working on, you want everybody to know about you, but not really
Mhm.
having those cognizant, what are those purposeful partnerships that are really going to push this effort forward in a large, meaningful way. Um, and so that's been really successful more recently in the past couple of years. The other thing that was successful and not at first was social media, right? And people throw terms around like, "Oh, you got to be on social media," but
Mhm.
that can mean 5,000 different things, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
Which one? Yeah.
yeah, well, that and how do you use it,
Mhm.
right? And like the audience that you're catering to or that you're hoping to engage or reach out to uses social media in different ways, and so
Mm.
that was a big learning curve for us. We clearly weren't using social media the right way. We really didn't have a lot of followers at first. And we had utilized different ways of utilizing social media, particularly Instagram and Facebook here. Um, and we finally found someone who really connected with peer pride and just having the peer in the community. She was from the community and she had worked with another business. And so because she really was vested
Yeah.
in it, knew who it was catering to. I mean, our social media following jumped, by leaps and bounds just with bringing her on board because she knew how to really focus in on what we were trying to do.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting point because I know every jurisdiction, consulting company, nonprofit, everyone wants to be on social media, feels like they need to have social media presence, and how do we manage that? So I really like that approach of utilizing a local person who's already plugged in rather than bringing in an outsider consultant to manage your social media. Maybe drawing from within your own community might be the best approach.
Yeah. Yeah, it really helped a lot, and we were really surprised because, it hadn't really resonated with us that that could be the issue on why we weren't being successful there, but
Mhm.
it didn't feel right, so once we were like, "Something doesn't feel right here," to be
Mhm.
able to pivot and take that change and to reach out to somebody else, that was huge for us, so yeah.
Yeah. So is she then is she in that role as a volunteer?
Actually, she is a paid member.
Oh,
So,
okay.
we did hire her,
Yeah.
um, to do this for us, and that was a well worthwhile investment.
Okay. Oh, good. That's good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Then is there any experiences you've had or lessons learned, things that you tried where you thought, "Oh, this is gonna work really well," and then it didn't go as
Yeah.
planned? Yeah.
I don't think there's any project that's, like, went off without a hitch, right? It's like, "Oh, okay. We're gonna do this now." So, we did have, some pitfalls in there. Um, and we learned from them, right? So, the social media is a great example of a pitfall there, but other things were events that we would hold. So we
Mm,
were doing different events and activities um, you know, and although they were fun, they just weren't successful. And so like a bingo night, we had bingo since October is Pier Pride month here in San Clemente. We would do a bingo night every night or every Thursday night. And it was just a lot of work. I mean, it was fun, but it was a lot of work and it really just wasn't a big bang for your buck.
okay.
And so that was just like, oh, okay, we'll go ahead and let that go. But as far as projects themselves, because we're dealing with community improvement projects, a lot of that is, well, how fast can the city move? Right.
Mm,
So
mm,
that was the big pitfalls that we were running into is all cities have a lot of they're multitasking and doing a lot of hats too, and different things come up to be different priorities. And sometimes, beautifying the pier doesn't fall within those priorities. But
mhm, mhm,
those have been our biggest challenges in still being able to accomplish some project once a year,
mhm,
uh, and being able to pivot with, all right, we can't get this done this year, but what can we get done this year because the city isn't able to complete that task? Um, that's been the big like, oh, okay, here we go. That didn't work. How do we do this better next time? And how can we help keep things on track when things are not in your control? So
Okay, yeah, that's challenging. So, do you have strategies for managing that now? Like, do you have regular check-in meetings with the city? Or I know you said you go to city council meetings, for example, to give them updates, but do you have other kind of internal working meetings or something like that?
we do, and planning a lot of planning is project management, and so that's my role within the group too is having a task list and what those goals are and being able to anticipate, okay, the city's falling behind on these things that we might be meeting our goals, but they're not being able to recognize that this just isn't going to get done this year. We need
Mhm,
to prioritize. And two, it helps keep us at the forefront of the city's mind to say, hey, we're vested in this too. Here are the milestones that we can see. Here's the dates that we both have to hit in order to make this a reality. And if we don't hit these dates, then we risk not being able to do it.
mhm.
Um, and the pier, because it is a tourist attraction and we have coastal commission to contend with too, you can't do any improvement to the pier between Memorial Day and Labor Day, right? Because
Oh,
it's busy summer season.
yeah,
It's
right.
not that all window.
Right.
Nobody needs that.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, you don't want to have people coming on their vacation and, oh, sorry, the pier's closed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No snack shack this time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we have to plan for those types of things too. But
Okay, now am I getting this mixed up with a different city? Okay, I don't know if we'll keep this in the podcast or not, but I'm thinking of Chad and JT and the Paul Walker statue. Was that the
oh yeah.
San Clemente Pier?
Yeah. There's a good story there. Okay. So
Okay,
Chad and JT, who I love to death. They are hilarious and amazing. And if your listeners have not heard of them, I highly recommend you YouTube and search Chad and JT. So they are hilarious in that they show up to cities, and they've gotten pretty popular for this in addition to being comics, right? They show up to cities and do outrageous things. And I think at first they were doing it just to be funny, but I don't think they intended it to draw attention to what local government is and to not take local government as this thing you can't approach, and so I think
Mhm.
they've done an amazing thing there. But San Clemente was the first city that they ever came to. And I was at that meeting. I had an item that night, and they came to the podium and started talking, and nobody had ever seen this before. And, you know, Kelly knows this. I have a very distinct laugh. And I was dying, and you can hear me in the San Clemente video laughing hysterically because what they wanted to do was they wanted to put a Paul Walker statue on the pier. And one of the other board members is a past mayor for the city. And with everything we do, still to this day, we are looking for a way to put a Paul Walker statue on the pier just to pay homage to him. And we almost accomplished it last year when we redid the snack shack because we were gonna put a like a statue up there. It was just to cover up some utility boxes and stuff. But we had figured out how we could hide a Paul Walker statue in there to pay homage. I don't know, we didn't get it, but we're still looking at
Okay,
hard.
it's
So
on the
funny.
agenda though. It's on the to-do.
Yeah,
Okay,
it is a goal.
that that's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
we need to keep updated on this and the progress.
Yes, exactly. We will. We'll check in and let you know once we accomplish it.
I think my favorite quote, well, because they came back a second time,
Mhm.
but I see they were asking, "When can we break ground on this?"
Yeah.
And
I think they wanted to carve it into a cliffside, like Mount Rushmore, because we have cliffs in San Clemente.
like, "Sir, we could this is a pier, we cannot break ground on here." And now that you said you're laughing in the video, I have to go back and rewatch. It's
Yeah,
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 and to
because you can
listen
hear it.
for Amber laughing.
Yes, exactly. It was wonderful. It was so
Oh, okay. So then to bring it back to all seriousness,
yeah.
if other communities have, whether it's a peer, not there's not that many communities with a peer, maybe,
Mhm.
but whether it's a peer or another tourist attraction that maybe is managed by a nonprofit entity or some other entity in the community, do you have any words of wisdom or advice on how to approach that, how to manage that interaction? Like if maybe someone's just getting started out with forming the group, where did they start? What should they do? What should they not do?
Well, I think first you have to identify, what is that community resource, right? That you're trying to do, and then who does own it? If you don't own it, is it a nonprofit or is it a city? And then once you identify that, then you really have to get the stakeholders on board that own it and make sure that they want to do this partnership with you too. You can't. It's not good to go around telling people, their baby's ugly, right? They, for lack of a better term, because that's not going to get you anywhere. But um, to, have a common goal and purpose, and then to kind of get a rally around that for what your vision is. But once you accomplish that, then first and foremost, you've got to establish trust. You just can't go around asking for things, right? Like people get kind of weary because if it's a resource to the community, there's a sense of belonging to them. People don't like change. So that's first and foremost, right? And so you have to kind of go forward and be like, hey, can we be better without causing a lot of change? We want to preserve it. But in order
Mm,
to preserve it, we have to do these things in order to enhance and keep it.
yeah.
So establishing trust is really a big thing. And then, once you establish trust, it's never going to be what you think it's going to be, right? Because you're beholden to all these other stakeholders. And so you got to be able to pivot too.
Ah, pivot. Okay. Like the friend, I'll stick in a meme from Friends with the couch. Pivot.
Exactly. He's like, oh, that's not working. Okay, well, let's do something else.
All right. And then if our listeners want to follow up with you, get in touch, have more questions, where can they follow you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I would love to hear from anybody. I'm always happy to chat. So the website is communitycatalyst.com, and that's community-catalyst.com. Or you can always find me on LinkedIn under Amber Gregg.
Amber Gray with two G's.
Two G's,
Two G's at the end.
G-R-E-G. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and what is the website for the Pier Pride group?
Yeah, that's peerpride.org. Yeah. And
Okay,
that's a great example for any grassroots group looking to get started. And they're always happy to share and talk about, the challenges that they face and the successes that they did. But it's a wonderful example of people dedicated to their community and preserving their resources. So super proud of
wonderful. Okay,
them.
thanks. Well, thank you so much, Amber, for being on Fireside Chats.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Oh, good. Yeah, see, everyone, Amber said it was fun,
Yeah.
so you wanna be on the podcast too.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, as always, thank you, listeners, for tuning in, and thanks again to our generous sponsor, Conveo. Head on over to engagingcities.org, where you can find additional episodes and other helpful resources related to community engagement. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.